Good morning, everyone, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to comment on the Auditor General's report tabled in the Queensland Parliament this morning. We've been working with the Auditor General for the last 6 months, and I'm very pleased with the report he has tabled in Parliament. His officers have done a quite outstanding job and a very fair job in investigating the Cape York Aboriginal Australian Academy arrangements at Aurukun. You will recall that the Aurukun School was closed in May last year due to an incident involving youth in Aurukun, an attack on the principal, and that then caused the evacuation of the teachers because of their safety. That was an action that I endorsed at the time. The Director General of Education then caused a review to be undertaken into the Aurukun School. A review that was to take several days but ended up taking 6 weeks. And a review report was produced that went beyond the parameters of normal school reviews. And this was the subject of some consternation on our part because of the many inaccuracies in that school review. There were a number of issues raised in the school review that went beyond the normal nature of those reviews, and we were concerned about some of the assumptions that were made in that report, and I articulated my criticisms of that report at the time. However, one of the most egregious aspects of the Aurukun School review was that it was conducted while the school was closed. There's never been before a review of a school undertaken while the doors of the school are shut. There was ample opportunity for a review to be conducted when the school was reopened, but that was not what was chosen to be done by DET and the Director General of DET, Dr. Waterston. And so how could there be a fair comprehension of the academy at Aurukun while the school is closed? Nevertheless, I was assured by the Director General of Education Queensland that there would be an audit of the finances undertaken in the normal way by a private accounting firm as per usual. The usual practice is that the department outsources any questions about financial audits to the private sector. In this case, I was surprised that Dr. Waterston's assurance that that would take place was replaced by his decision to call in the Queensland Audit Office. This was an escalation in the decision by the department to bring the Aurukun School into focus by the Queensland Auditor General. That raised my eyebrows, but nevertheless, we cooperated with that process, and we have done so for the last 6 months. And the audit report this morning tabled makes very clear that any suggestion of financial impropriety which had been implied by the department and certainly the subject of great speculation in the media at the time is unfounded. I'm very pleased with that finding. There's no financial impropriety in the arrangement between our organisation and the department. And indeed, all of the issues raised in the Auditor General's report makes very clear that the failings have been on the part of the Department of Employment and Education and Training, DET. The misstating of attendance enrolment figures at Aurukun is the responsibility of DET. And I noticed from some of the preemptive media reports from this morning, even now there's a lack of comprehension of the situation. Cape York Aboriginal Australian Academy is a partnership, and two parties bring two different things to the table. And responsibility for enrolment is a debt responsibility. If you have a look at the report, it is there in plain English. Responsibility for overstating enrolments is the responsibility of the Education Department, not our organisation. Indeed, our response to the Auditor General makes clear that we take no benefit from overstating enrolments. We are not funded on the basis of enrolments. So there was no involvement and no interest in us in relation to the misstating of enrolment numbers. That is completely a departmental responsibility. So I'm very pleased that the innuendo that flew around last year, an innuendo that was encouraged by the Director General of the department, Jim Waterston, that somehow there was something untoward in relation to the financial arrangements between our organisation and the department. Well, that has been very clearly refuted by the Auditor General's report, written there in plain English. I have to say that I drew a breath when I found out that the department was bringing the Auditor General in. One thing you have to understand is no government department invites Darth Vader in. No government department asks the Auditor General to come and audit their schools or their business. So it was an extraordinary step by the Director General to bring the Office of the Auditor General in to do what is routinely done by KPMG or some other private sector auditor. In my view, that was a decision taken to really put the screws on us, on my organisation. And but this has been an own goal by the department. This has been a complete own goal by the department, because the spotlight has now made very clear that all of these administrative failings have been the responsibility of the department. And the misstating of enrolments and a whole raft of other administrative issues are the responsibility of the department and its Director General. Now, I want to make one more comment. In the middle of the Auditor General's inquiry, he leaked an internal audit report to the ABC. That internal audit report had at the front cover, confidential, not to be released, subject to prosecution if it is distributed. It's an internal report. And yet the ABC was handed a copy of that internal audit on the very day Minister Kate Jones gave an interview to the ABC. And we learn afterwards that Dr. Waterston claims responsibility for handing the report, for authorising the handing of the internal report to the ABC. And of course, it is that report that was the subject of the QAO audit. The very report that the QAO investigated over the last 6 months was the internal report that was handed to the ABC. One of the unknown issues is whether the circumstances of that handing over the report. Was it a leak? Was it a right to information release? When we inquired about that, the Director General said it was an administrative release. That is, not through the right to information process, but an informal handing over of the report to a journalist. Now, the department's policy in relation to right to information releases under administrative release scheme says that you can't do an administrative release to the media. That's what the department's own policy says. There was not to be, you can't use the administrative release scheme for releases to the media. And the second thing that the policy states is that you're not supposed to release any documents while a QAO audit is underway. And of course that was the situation here in relation to the QAO's inquiry. So there's a whole lot of unanswered questions here in relation to the role that the Minister and the Director General played in releasing those internal documents outside of the ambit of right to information. There's also the question about culpability for all of those administrative problems, including the misstatement of enrolments that were entirely DET's responsibility. Now, I understand the government is actively engaged in trying to sheet home responsibility for these things to my organisation. Read the audit report. It makes very clear who is responsible for what, and those issues that have been raised by the Auditor General are purely the responsibility of the department. And I believe that the Director General has got to be held to account for the problems identified in that report that's been tabled here this morning. Thank you.